About 5 years ago now, we had a press conference similar to this where we announced the first sustainability report. There are many other programs at the time. There are very few left that can stand up here with the longevity and say, now we're here with our 2009 report, and we have every confidence that we'll be here in 5 years talking about the 2014 report. There's been many of the speakers have referenced this continuous improvement. Well, I wanted to give a little detail. I think it's important to understand that it starts with the workbook that's been referenced and the criteria. You can also do that online. Everybody that goes through and submits their data gets an individual customized report. So how many people, what percentage of wineries, what percentage of vineyards are in those different categories. That information is then used to do targeted workshops, and then finally developing these action plans that were referenced, and that's a core critical part of the certification program. There was two really critical examples where once the report was published in 2004, went through that continuous improvement process and made changes. So the first was pest management improvements. This was referenced earlier. We published the report, and we were fortunate enough to receive some funding initially from American Farmland Trust, later from the California Department of Pesticide Regulation, and later other funders, to establish demonstration vineyards, conduct 131 workshops, and this is where just in those workshops alone, 7,000 folks went. Now these workshops also had some water, some air quality, some others, but they all had some component of pest management in them. What that was allowed to do was to go through that process of looking at where we were, targeting areas for improvement, implementing education, and then remeasuring it. And so what happened? 35 of 38 criteria improved, and 92% of the criteria improved. And over that, where the targeted education was most directed had the greatest improvement. It really demonstrates the power of an actual program driving change. Now, of course, people have to make those changes, which is even more impressive, because that's a lot of people making a lot of changes. And we were fortunate that Dr. Joe Browdy really led that program and still leads part of that. Similar story on the energy efficiency. We published the report. We didn't have a lot of percentage of 4s and 3s. This was a debate among the committee at the time. Do we sort of show how we're doing? And we talked about it and said, absolutely, we've got to do this. PG&E came in and said, boy, we're doing a terrible job of providing our services to this wine industry. How come we don't see more people doing audits? How come they're not doing more? So they funded a program, 29 workshops, 900 participants, and look, lo and behold, 5-fold increase in the number of energy efficiency projects, 6.25 million invested in rebates, and 20 million in solar installations. And the data, and this is work that John Garn really led from Viewcraft, the curve looks like a hockey stick. Our HIP investors would be totally pleased. It's a perfect thing. And you see this and you go, wow, look at that. You've identified a potential option, you put some resources behind it, and lo and behold, changes very positive. 7 out of 7 criteria showed improvement, and 7 out of 10 winery criteria, 70%. Again, remarkable numbers. So this is just an example. Now, I think the key issue here was it took partnerships and it took funding. We have some chapters where there wasn't as great of improvements, and those were often ones because we couldn't find a partner who was willing, and we didn't have the resources to do it. I do invite you to look at the full report. I just gave you a couple of high-level examples. There's examples in every one of those chapters. This is the list. John referenced it, others referenced it. There's just a great level of detail, and it really does go from that ground to glass. And Paul pointed that out and did the cheers at the end. And I should have my wine, but I have the virtual cheer right up there. So, and you'll all have that soon enough. So thank you very much.